What happens when an undercover CEO steps into the chaos of their own business? In this story, a restaurant owner goes undercover as a dishwasher and discovers the harsh reality his employees face: long hours, zero support, and a manager who cares more about his phone than his staff. But when one hardworking cook reaches her breaking point, the CEO realizes it's time to step in and make things right. Stay with us as we uncover the truth, expose bad leadership, and watch a workplace transform right before our eyes. Nathan Carter had built his casual dining restaurant chain from the ground up, starting with a small family-owned diner before expanding to over 20 locations. What was once a business he knew inside and out had become something distant, as he got caught up in corporate meetings and expansion plans. Recently, however, troubling reports had begun surfacing about one particular restaurant: employees quitting at an alarming rate, poor service driving away customers, and complaints about a toxic work environment. The regional managers dismissed it as an issue of bad hires or lazy staff, but Nathan wasn't convinced. The more excuses he heard, the more frustrated he became. He didn't believe a business failed because of its employees, it failed because of poor leadership. Determined to find the truth, Nathan made a bold decision. He would go undercover. He shaved his beard, dyed his hair a dull brown, and swapped his tailored suits for a pair of stained kitchen pants and a plain t-shirt. To everyone else, he would be Nate, a middle-aged man looking for entry-level work as a dishwasher. None of the employees at this location had ever met him in person, and he planned to use that to his advantage. If there was a real problem at this restaurant, he would see it with his own eyes. With his new identity in place, he applied for a job, ready to step into the unknown and uncover what was really happening behind the kitchen doors. Nathan's first day as Nate was anything but smooth. The moment he stepped into the back entrance of the restaurant, the chaos hit him like a wave. Pans clattering, orders being shouted, the smell of grease and cleaning chemicals mixing in the air. Employees darted back and forth between the kitchen and the dining area, their faces strained with exhaustion. No one paid much attention to the new dishwasher, except for Olivia, a sharp-eyed waitress in her early 30s. She gave him a quick once-over, clearly skeptical but too busy to ask questions. "Dish pit's over there," she said, nodding toward a pile of dirty plates stacked high in the sink. "Hope you're fast or you'll drown back here." Nathan barely had time to introduce himself before assistant manager Tony strolled in, his presence barely noticeable amid the chaos. Unlike the employees who were rushing to keep up, Tony looked disinterested, sipping a soda and scrolling on his phone. Nathan quickly realized something was off. There was no real leadership. The restaurant manager, Jake, was nowhere to be seen, leaving Tony, a visibly overwhelmed assistant, in charge. Instead of guiding the team, Tony barked orders at employees without lifting a finger to help. Nathan started scrubbing dishes, struggling to keep up. He had underestimated how intense the job was. His arms ached and sweat dripped down his forehead within minutes. Olivia, noticing his struggle, wordlessly stepped in to help, rinsing off plates before handing them to him. "You get used to it," she muttered, moving efficiently despite the rush. Throughout the evening, Nathan observed the dysfunction. Servers scrambling to handle orders, the kitchen staff barely keeping up, and employees looking burnt out. When a fryer broke down, Tony ignored it, forcing the cooks to work around the issue, causing even more delays. Customers at the front grew impatient and complaints started rolling in. Despite the pressure, Olivia remained calm, managing customers and covering for her co-workers whenever she could. She clearly knew how to run the floor, but without support from management, it was a losing battle. Nathan realized that this restaurant wasn't struggling because of bad employees, it was suffering from the absence of real leadership. If this was just the first shift, he could only imagine how much worse things would get. As the evening rush intensified, Nathan saw just how much pressure the employees were under and how little help they received. Olivia, the waitress who had shown him the ropes, wasn't just taking care of her own tables, she was also stepping in to fix mistakes, handle customer complaints, and even help the kitchen when orders got backed up. She moved quickly and efficiently, but it was obvious she was doing the job of 3 people. Meanwhile, Maggie, one of the line cooks, looked exhausted as she prepped plates at the grill station. Her hands moved fast, flipping burgers and assembling meals with precision, but there was a nervous energy to her movements. During a rare lull in the rush, Nathan overheard her approach Tony, the assistant manager, her voice cautious. "Hey, Tony, any chance I could pick up an extra shift this week? I just need a little more to cover daycare." Tony barely looked up from his phone. "Not my problem, Maggie. Maybe don't have kids if you can't afford them," he muttered, with a smirk. Nathan felt his hands tighten around a dish, his stomach twisting at the blatant cruelty. Maggie stood frozen for a second, clearly trying to keep her emotions in check. "I can take shorter breaks, work late, whatever it takes," she said softly. Tony sighed dramatically. "Like I said, not my problem. If you don't like your hours, find another job." Maggie's face burned red, but she swallowed back whatever she wanted to say and nodded stiffly before returning to the grill. Nathan could see her blinking rapidly, fighting tears. Nathan wanted to speak up, to tell Tony exactly what he thought of his leadership skills, or lack thereof, but he knew he couldn't blow his cover yet. He wasn't just looking for one incident of bad management. He needed to see how deep the problem ran. Across the kitchen, Leo, a high schooler working as a fry cook, struggled to keep up with the constant demand. Orders were piling up and he was being pulled in every direction. Someone yelled at him to refill the soda machine. Another called him to clean up a spill near the drive-thru window. "I can't do everything at once," he blurted out, frustration breaking through his usually quiet demeanor. Nathan glanced toward Tony, expecting him to step in and help. Instead, the assistant manager was nowhere to be found. Olivia, noticing Leo's panic, rushed over to assist him, balancing another customer complaint in the process. Nathan had seen enough. It wasn't just about poor management. It was about a complete lack of care for the people keeping this place afloat. This restaurant wasn't failing because of its employees. It was failing because no one in charge seemed to care if they succeeded or not. The breaking point came during the dinner rush, when the restaurant was at its busiest. Customers packed the dining area, orders piled up, and the kitchen staff struggled to keep up with demand. The tension in the air was thick. Everyone was exhausted, running on fumes, but there was no backup, no support from management. Nathan kept his head down, scrubbing dishes as fast as he could, but his ears were tuned to every interaction happening around him. Then it happened. A fryer broke down mid-shift, sending the already overwhelmed kitchen into full-blown crisis mode. Maggie, still shaken from her earlier conversation with Tony, was now scrambling to cover 2 stations at once, flipping patties while trying to manage the growing number of unfinished orders. Sweat dripped from her forehead as she rushed between tasks, her hands moving faster than seemed humanly possible. "Where the hell is Tony?" Olivia called out from across the room, her voice strained as she tried to manage both the front and back of the house. No answer. Nathan's eyes scanned the kitchen and found Tony leaning against the back office door, sipping his soda and staring at his phone. That's it. Maggie, clearly on the verge of breaking down, turned to Tony, desperation in her voice. "Tony, I need help. I can't do all of this alone." Tony finally looked up, rolling his eyes. "Not my job," he muttered. "Figure it out." Maggie froze for a moment, her face a mix of frustration, exhaustion, and disbelief. Then, without another word, she slammed her spatula onto the grill, ripped off her apron, and walked out the back door. The entire kitchen fell silent, save for the sound of sizzling grease and the steady beeping of the order monitors. Olivia rushed after her, calling out, "Maggie, wait!" But she was already gone. Nathan felt something in him snap. This wasn't just a bad manager, this was outright neglect. The people who actually cared about their jobs, who worked themselves to exhaustion to keep the place running, were being driven out by someone who refused to lift a finger. As he gritted his teeth, Nathan knew one thing for sure. He had seen enough. He needed to act, and soon. The question was no longer if he would step in, it was how soon he would drop the act and start cleaning the house. Nathan spent the rest of his shift in a haze, scrubbing dishes while his mind raced. Maggie walking out wasn't just a loss. It was a warning sign. How many other employees had reached their breaking point and quit because of mismanagement like this? How many more would leave if nothing changed? He needed more than just his own observations. He needed hard facts. That night, after finishing his shift, Nathan stepped outside and pulled out his phone. He dialed Maria, a longtime HR executive he trusted, to tell him the truth. "Maria, I need a favor," he said, keeping his voice low. "I need the employee records for the downtown location. Turnover rates, scheduling patterns, complaints, anything that can explain what's going on here." Maria hesitated for only a moment. "That's not a good sign, Nathan. What are you seeing?" "Neglect. Employees being overworked, ignored, or outright mistreated. And I just watched one of the best cooks quit in the middle of a rush because of it," he said, his grip tightening on the phone. "I want to know if this is a one-off problem or if it's happening at my other locations too." Maria sighed. "I'll pull the files and send them to you by morning, but if it's that bad, why not step in now?" Nathan ran a hand through his hair. "Because I need the full picture. I don't want to make a knee-jerk decision based on emotion. I want to fix this properly." After hanging up, Nathan sat in his car staring at the restaurant's back entrance. Inside, Olivia was still cleaning up, Leo was likely finishing his final tasks, and Tony was probably sitting in the office, completely oblivious to the damage he was doing. The people who worked the hardest here deserved better. Tomorrow, Nathan would watch even closer, talk to more employees, and get the last pieces of the puzzle he needed. But one thing was certain: Tony's time as a manager was running out. The next evening, Nathan arrived early for his shift, blending into the usual chaos of the kitchen. He had everything he needed: the employee records, the turnover rates, the complaints filed against Tony, and his own first-hand experience of the dysfunction. It was time to end the charade. He just needed the right moment. That moment arrived sooner than expected. It started with another confrontation, Tony yelling at Leo in front of customers because he had forgotten to restock the drink station. The kid looked mortified, his hands shaking as he tried to fix the mistake. Olivia, ever the problem solver, rushed over to de-escalate, but Tony snapped at her too, accusing her of undermining his authority. Nathan had seen enough. He wiped his hands on his apron, took a deep breath, and walked straight into the office. Tony was there as usual, lounging in his chair, feet propped up on the desk. He barely glanced up as Nathan stepped inside. "What do you want, dishwasher?" Tony muttered, still scrolling on his phone. Nathan shut the door behind him. "Actually, Tony, I'd like to talk about your management style." Tony snorted. "Oh yeah? You got an opinion on that, rookie?" Nathan removed his glasses, straightened his posture, and let the weight of silence settle between them. When Tony finally looked up, his face went pale. "Wait," Tony stammered, his eyes widening. Nathan folded his arms. "I'm Nathan Carter, CEO of this company, and we need to have a serious conversation." For a moment, Tony just sat there, his mouth opening and closing like a fish gasping for air. Then he scrambled to sit up, laughing nervously. I didn't realize you were coming. If I had known..." Nathan cut him off. "That's exactly why I didn't tell you." His voice was calm but firm. "I've been here long enough to see how you treat your employees. I've watched you ignore them, humiliate them, and run this restaurant into the ground. That ends today." Tony swallowed hard. "I can fix this. Just give me a chance." Nathan shook his head. "You've had plenty of chances. You're done here. Pack your things." And just like that, Tony's reign was over. With Tony gone, Nathan stepped out of the office and into the dining area where the staff had gathered, their faces tense with uncertainty. The air was thick with silence. Everyone had seen the confrontation, but no one dared to speak first. Olivia looked particularly wary, her arms crossed as she exchanged glances with Leo and the rest of the kitchen crew. Nathan took a deep breath and spoke. "I owe you all an explanation." He removed his apron and set it aside, standing before them not as Nate the dishwasher, but as Nathan Carter, the CEO. A ripple of shock spread through the team. Leo's mouth dropped open, Olivia's eyes narrowed in realization, and Rachel, a young server, let out an audible, "No way." Nathan nodded. "Yes, I've been working undercover for the past few days. I came here because I needed to see for myself what was going on. And what I saw? It wasn't just a broken fryer or a few missed orders. It was a team holding this place together without the support it deserves." The tension in Olivia's face softened slightly, but her expression remained skeptical. "So what now?" she asked. Nathan turned to her. Now we fix this, starting with you. He took a step closer. I've seen you running this restaurant while Tony sat in the office. You've handled customers, helped the kitchen, and stepped in when things got tough. That's real leadership. So I want you to take over as interim manager. Effective immediately. Olivia's jaw dropped. Me? Nathan smiled. Yes, you've already been doing the job. It's time you got the title and the pay to match. For the first time that night, Olivia looked genuinely speechless. Then, slowly, a grin broke across her face. All right, I'm in. A murmur of approval spread through the staff. Rachel wiped her eyes, and Leo, still in shock, muttered, About time. Nathan turned back to the group. We'll be bringing in more staff to ease your workload. Scheduling is going to be fairer, and I'll personally make sure the changes we make here happen across all locations. A weight seemed to lift from the room. The team wasn't just surprised, they were hopeful. For the first time in a long time, things were finally looking up. A week later, Nathan walked into the restaurant not as Nate the dishwasher, but as himself. This time, he wasn't there to observe in secret, he was there to see the changes in action. The difference was immediately noticeable. The energy in the restaurant had shifted, employees moved with purpose, the kitchen ran smoothly, and customers seemed more at ease. The usual tension in the air had been replaced with a sense of control and teamwork. No one was rushing in panic, and no one was being berated. At the front, Olivia stood near the register, clipboard in hand, reviewing the schedule. She looked up and spotted Nathan, her face breaking into a wide grin. Didn't think you'd be back so soon, boss, she teased, walking over. Nathan chuckled. Just wanted to check in. How's it going? Olivia held up the schedule. We finalized the new shifts. Maggie's back and she's getting the hours she needs. Leo finally has help in the kitchen. And get this, no one's walked out mid-shift all week. Nathan nodded, pleased. That's what I like to hear. Just then, Maggie passed by, carrying a box of supplies. She hesitated, then set it down and approached Nathan. Hey, Mr. Carter, I just wanted to say thank you, she said, rubbing the back of her neck, for listening, for actually doing something. Nathan smiled. You deserve a workplace that respects you, Maggie. I'm just sorry it took this long. As she walked away, Olivia glanced at Nathan, a knowing look in her eyes. You know, she said, you could have just sent a memo. Nathan laughed. Yeah, but where's the fun in that? He glanced around one last time, watching the team work together like they always should have. This wasn't just about fixing one restaurant. It was about setting a new standard for all of them. And this was only the beginning. The story of Nathan Carter's undercover experience highlights a crucial lesson in leadership. True success isn't just about profits, but about people. As businesses grow, it becomes easy for executives to lose sight of the everyday struggles of frontline workers. But as Nathan discovered, a company's foundation isn't built in boardrooms. It's built in the kitchens, stockrooms, and service counters where employees work tirelessly to keep things running. One of the biggest takeaways is that leadership isn't about authority, it's about responsibility. Tony had a title but no real leadership skills, while Olivia, without any official power, was the one actually holding the team together. Nathan's decision to recognize and reward true leadership changed the restaurant's culture overnight. The story also underscores the importance of listening to employees. Many workplaces fail not because of bad workers, but because of bad management. When employees are overworked, underappreciated, and dismissed, morale collapses. However, when leadership steps in to support and empower them, productivity and loyalty soar. Ultimately, the biggest lesson is this: good business is built on respect. When employees feel valued, they don't just work harder, they make the business stronger, and that's the real key to long-term success.